should have. It's gonna be a couple latency issues, but it should be straight. Bum, bum, bum. Baby, through the door. All right. I just actually wanted to make sure I was going live, so that is the case. All right. I was trying to kind of get some stuff set up, but that wasn't going to be the case, was it? All right. So, but we haven't dropped any frames, so. Hi, and welcome to Fostering Opinion Live. This is a live show hosted by me, Travis Foster. It's going to be hosted and kind of edited by me on the fly. So yeah, this is a brand new format. I've done some of the live stuff before. You see on the channel, I've done very interview things. I want to kind of continue to do that. But I want to do a daily show. It allows me to get like a smaller chunk for that stuff, and it allows me to kind of work a little bit more and kind of give like more of my thoughts as things come out. The opening track, which I will be using for now, is a track by my good friend Eric Kennedy. You find him at erickennedy's.bandcamp.com for the game Hardest Light, which is made by one of my friends, Luis Lugo. So yeah, very incestual is how you say it. Starting off right, getting people who I know to kind of work on stuff or to help me with stuff or using their assets. But obviously, I want to definitely get them the credit. So today we are going to kind of go over some stuff. Like I said, this is going to be a very topical news show. It's a weekly radio show, kind of getting myself acclimated to kind of giving this information out, right? So, welcome to the very first episode again of Fostering Opinion. I am Travis Foster. I have written for my own site, PTFGN. That was almost like 5 years ago. I've also wrote for a website by name of Front Towards Gamer. Formerly, a lot of the people I worked with now work at stackup.org, but still two really good sites. I've also done some site stuff on different sites. I've written for a now not available site, but maybe soon, Cartoon Christmas, ran by Chris Antista, who was formerly of Capcom Games Radar, now is over at Laser Time Network. I assume that some of you have followed me as a member of that community, so I'm sure some of you have kind of checked it out. I also podcast. I do a podcast. I've done a podcast now for 5 years called P&B. I host it with Kayla Zumbaum, Dylan Tierney, Landon Van Buskirk, and Marco Villapondo. These are four really smart people, and we have really kind of engaging conversations and things like that. But I we really try to keep that evergreen, and that's another reason why I want to do this kind of live radio show on YouTube, right, where the camera is now on my face at all times, because I wanted to do something a little bit different. And, I have a lot more thoughts and I want to kind of get in depth, and it gives me a chance to kind of read things through and kind of do a different thing, right? So, this is my studio. Obviously, if you've seen the other ones, I had like a whole different kind of studio setup, but this one will be a little bit different, and I have a better mic, this Blue Yeti mic. Insinuate the mic. So yeah, this will be definitely a kind of a different thing, and I'm going to try to integrate a lot more stuff into it as we go forward. Again, I'm basically, not only am I running the show, I'm hosting, I'm also producing and getting everything through. So as we kind of move forward, we will kind of get better at it, and it will become a lot more fun, right? So for all you early adopters, welcome. For all you people who come back later, I don't know why you come back to evergreen content. Well, not evergreen content, very much of the day content later. But hey, that's definitely your prerogative. And if you want to, obviously, there is the subscribe button, which is below. I have to figure out how to adjust where my camera is, so that's below. So please make sure to like and subscribe and all that jazz joys. Today, one of the bigger news I wanted to talk about today was the voice actors strike that is currently happening, and it's going to started picking up today. I believe there's going to be the first actual picketing today. So, for those of you who do not know what's going on, as of Friday, the 21st, the voice actors guild. Let me get the full guilding name. The Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, or SAG-AFTRA, which we are going to be calling it going forward in this episode. They are formally striking against different companies. Right now, they are striking against 11 different game publishers, which will include Electronic Arts, Insomniac, Activision, and Disney. So where we're kind of getting at in this whole thing is that originally there was a deal that was placed, I believe, in 1994. When we get the actual full article, and that's one of the great things I like to pull up here, is because I can actually pull up the articles and read exactly what the issue is and give you exactly what we're trying to see. So let's see if I can pull it up. All right. Okay, so I do not have the exact date of the original one. I do apologize about that. Way to throw your credibility. But apparently this has been an ongoing a fight since talks originally broke down between SAG-AFTRA and different video game companies, video game publishing companies, excuse me. And these talks broke down in 2014. And then in February 17, 2015, is when they have stopped working. And there's a lot of hullabaloo about it. There's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of opinions about it. Kind of play off the name, right? So with SAG-AFTRA, they are trying to get more money on the back end of their deals, according to this article by NPR, which was written by was it Tellerton? But it's an NPR article. They make about $238 per session, right? So it's very low, considering what they do and what they're going through. So they are trying to get more money that way. They're trying to make it a lot more safer for when they are doing more work, to make it less dangerous on their throats, on their instruments that really make them money. And they are also trying to get compensation, trying to make it safer for that. So they also want transparency in the hiring practices for people who are not very well versed in gaming. A lot of game news is very guarded just because of the element of surprise. a lot of companies do not want people know what games are coming out or what games are being developed, because that's their whole thing. A lot of the marketing that goes into game development and goes into game issues. That was such a weird jump. That is very it's very held together. All right, so. Just recently, last week, the Nintendo Switch was announced, and that there were kind of rumors they were floating out like, hey, this is what this is, and there were some that were true, and some that weren't, but they were able to ultimately keep the reveal to themselves. As with when you take something like Rockstar, where Rockstar just announced Red Dead Redemption 2 and just had their trailer. But there was a good amount of time where people realized, hey, this is something that's coming out. There's more of this game that's coming out. What are we going to see? And so the trailer was there, but we had an idea this was what they were working towards. So a lot of times game companies do not want that, right? They want to have that monopoly of being able to say, hey, here's a game, here's what's coming out. I think the best example was at this year's E3, no, not this year, I'm sorry, last year's E3, when Bethesda went on stage and we all knew that Fallout 4 was happening, but for them to be like, okay, Fallout 4 is happening and it's coming out this year, and here we go. It gives you that palpable feeling, especially as a consumer, right? And that's what I am, and that's what a lot of people are. Being able to look at something and just being like, hey, here we go, all chips on the table. I'm in because I see something, I can tangibly get it, and I can move forward. There's not a huge hype train, right? But the SAG-AFTRA, they're trying to get a lot more transparency because they are voice actors, and a lot of them do not know what they are actually doing the voice for. And just to perfect example with Fallout 4 is one of the complaints that did get brought up, and this was actually brought up in the article written on Motherboard, and this is by Emmanuel Mayberg. And Emmanuel talks about the stories with let's see, hold on, his name. Story with Keith Farley, who, and I'm literally going to read it for the article. And again, you should read it on the Motherboard, and I'll probably link it in the episode notes. So if you please come back, and you can definitely see it there. Just search Motherboard. And this is coming from right from the article. Is a great motivator that works in a large part because Kellogg is a well-recognized character. Kellogg from Fallout 4. A despicable gun for hire, but one that the player gets to know and empathize with as they progress through the story. That's why I was shocked to learn on Friday's press conference with SAG-AFTRA, the union that represents voice actors, that the actor who gave Kellogg his voice and helped him bring him to life, Keith Farley, filled the role for a year and a half without knowing what game he was working on. Bethesda Software's Fallout 4 publisher Fallout 4's publisher refused to tell him. Farley argues that keeping voice actors in the dark about what projects they are working gives video game companies an unfair advantage. This benefits producers because agents aren't able to negotiate when they know an actor is working on a huge game, he said. This is one of the reasons why SAG-AFTRA's interactive community chair, Farley, supports the strike that went into effect on Friday and is picketing in the picketing of the game publisher Electronic Arts in Los Angeles on Monday. Voice actors want to know what games they are working on while they're in a recording booth. So I wanted to bring all that, and I wanted to bring this in, and because there's definitely two different ways of looking at this whole thing, right? And it's very important that we kind of get a whole breadth of the situation, what's kind of going on with it. So firstly, let's talk about the exclusivity of knowing the information, and do these actors have a right to know what they're going into, what they're working on? So again, I'm coming at this, and I want to preface everything. I'm coming at everything very ignorant to the side of making video games. I've never made a video game. I've never gone into the development. I've never even helped out with the development side. I've only worked in press. So a lot of stuff I get is a lot of conjecture and a lot of information that may come out or that may go forward. So I don't know exactly. I couldn't tell you exactly of what goes in and what process is going in. However, I will say that information is very important. Having worked in press for a, a good amount of years and very low level of press, I still I have been a part of a press team to break a leak. I've been a part of a press team to have something where a developer was not happy that information got put out, and that's a very big deal, especially when you come from that side. When it comes to getting information out and getting information moving forward, and having a sorry, this is a great thing about producing your own thing. You get pop-ups coming up. Having more information out there is very easy for that information to kind of leak. Not to say that these would be things that would happen or these would be things that would be, commonplace, but it can happen, right? So that's where you kind of get hesitant about what kind of move forwards with it. We just look at, I want to say it was probably, 3 years ago now, when the voice actor, Jim Cummings, who does the voice of P and all those other things. I want to say it was Jim Cummings. I don't want to attribute to him and be incorrect, but they were talking about Kingdom Hearts 3, and he was like, "Yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out next year." Now, obviously, it did not come out next year. We're still waiting on an actual release date for it, but having those voice actors who would be very proud to do something that they are, who would be very proud to be like, "Hey, I'm in this very big video game. Let me talk about that." That's another kind of barrier of kind of blocks that are going in, right? So you don't want to have that going forward, and knowing that you have so many chefs that are in the kitchen and you have so many people who want to speak about something very awesome that they're working on. I think that is a very easy thing to be hesitant about. However, I feel that I'm more on the actor side, and again, a lot of this is going to be me saying I am on the actor side on a lot of stuff. So again, I definitely want to preface it with that, but I am more on the actor side because playing for that role, not even what you're paying for, what you can negotiate, right? But actually being ready to know what kind of world you're in, what kind of story you're trying to tell, what kind of thing you're trying to move forward to. It's such a weird thing when you look at these voice actors. A lot of these voice actors do cartoons, they do television, they do movies, and they are under the same NDAs. There are a lot of movies that come out, or a lot of cartoons that are in production that never come out, right? So having them work on these things and knowing what they're working for is a very valuable asset. I like I said, I understand the trepidation on it, especially, but these people do sign NDAs, and they do very intensive work and make sure that these things don't come in. Just like with press, where a press person can sign an NDA, and if they buck against it, they could get blackballed. This is something that could also happen to voice actors as well. The voice actors union is very strong, and they do a very good job. I think that would probably be best, for them to know what they're working on. The other, another big point is, the pay, right? And that's where we get all weird, and that's where everything gets fun to talk about, because we, as regular consumers, right? The first thing we think about when somebody's like, "Oh, hey, well, I want to get more money to do a voice acting," right? I love cartoon, I love animation, I love voice acting. I want to get, a lot of money paying for it. But I, regular person, me, Travis, I would do that job for blah, right? Can I make ends eat? Can I make ends meet? Or can I make a relative facility of making ends meet? Or because it's such a short time period, maybe I can do this job while doing another job. So it's really me being a weekend warrior, right? And that's the thought process. It's the same thing that happens with sports. It's the same thing that happens with a lot of entertainment, movies and television, where we see it and it's not digging a ditch. I work in a call center, right? My 9 to 5 is I get on a headset, I talk to people, and then I go home. I don't go outside and lay bricks or dig in a ditch or do something that's manual labor, right? I don't go and get trash. And like, relatively, you can look at what I do and say, well, hey, maybe you shouldn't be paid this much, right? Or maybe you shouldn't pay that. And that's what the voice actor thing is, right? So you can look at a voice actor and be like, well, hey, I would love to do that job. It's a great job. You're playing voices. You get to have fun. Why do you get to do this for a living, right? Why can't I do this for a living? Um, but the more we kind of devalue what that art does, and it is still an art, and it's the same argument I make, when people talk about sports or talk about sports teams and they talk about writers and stuff like that. It's not about it's not about what you're doing is fun, so you should be able to get over it and you have to move forward. It's about making that pie, right? And if I'm a voice actor and I'm good at my job, I'm going to want to have more money. And that's not to say that anyone else can't do this job or it's such a menial, it's such a hard job to do, but to kind of be that voice, right? You're the voice, especially with a lot of voice actors. You're the voice of this character. John DiMaggio is the voice of Marcus Phoenix. Jennifer Hale, for a lot of people, is the voice of Shepard. They are so synonymous with this thing, it doesn't make any sense for them not to make the money. And what I like is the delineation that they have in here. Now, to be completely fair, the studios have offered a 9% increase in scale rate, but what they are actually looking for is the SAG-AFTRA. They are looking for a compensation deal. So when the game sells 2 million copies or downloads or reaches 2 million unique subscribers, they would get a raise. And there's a cap at $8 million downloads or subscribers. And I think that's a very safe rate. Obviously, going into a rate with a cap is very smart. But we have to look at it like this, and the argument is, well, the studio, right? And I want to come at it in a different way because what I see a lot of the pushback is, well, the studio should unionize, and I think at a point that is the case. I think the studio should unionize for very valid reasons. How the games industry is currently, how it kind of is working forward. I think it's not healthy to be just strictly employees, especially when you have studios that have folded in smaller things because it's a lot. It without that union, it kind of shrinks the work pool, right? So if I'm a brand new developer and I'm getting my foot in the door, I don't have this portfolio. Right, and this is I'm just gonna go forward with it. Whatever. If I sound stupid, it won't be the first time. It won't be the last. But you won't have that portfolio, right? So you can't move forward. You look at it and you're like, well, I'm a small, I'm a small guy. I just got started. I start my own small studio, and we have like a small hit, right? But we can't afford to make these bigger things. So then now we're in a whole hole where we're back into this kind of a loop, right? And we aren't able to, I'm not able to kind of work forward instead of having that union where, now you kind of have that basis and you have somebody that's able to fight for you, able to create your rates and better. But that's one argument. And I think it's an okay argument that there should be unions across the board. But I think the better argument to me, would be, wouldn't you want that wealth to bring actors in? And I say that to say, like, Rob Paulson, who does a fantastic podcast on voice actors, which is called Talking Tunes. He had talked about it before. A lot of voice actors are very hesitant to do video games. And we know the ones that are, synonymous with different games, right? So you have your Nolan North, Troy Baker, you have Jennifer Hales. I'm missing so many other, like Yuri Lowenthal. I'm missing so many other names, but you have these guys who are Steve Bloom, who are such veteran voice actors, right? And they continuously do all this work, and they work so much, and you see so much of them. And the reasons why is because a lot of their compatriots don't want to go into those studios and do that. Um, and I saw where it's like 4 hour sessions, right? And when you look at it on an average, like, oh, that's nothing, right? What's 4 hours? What's 4 4 hour shifts, right? If you're working a 4 hour shift, 4 days, 238, like maybe that's not a lot, or maybe that's not a little for you, but to break down every bit of dialogue, break down every bit of bit of thing, that you have to have a different inflection, everything, because you have to give the artist that asset, right? And that's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky, right? Everything that goes into it, you have to think about like every little bit of aspect that's going in, every little thing that you're going in, every little asset that you're giving, every little bit of your voice that you're giving forward. You have to see, you have to think, how is this going to affect what it is when we're going forward, right? So I think asking for that raise, and I think doing it, capping it on sale figures is actually a smarter way of doing it. And I don't think these voice actors are asking for a monumental sale. And again, being very ignorant of the inner working of a actual deal for a voice actors deal. If there is a scale depending on your work, if you're headlining or not. And I think these are very valid things you should bring in. I think if you're bringing in a transparency, maybe making it a rate of, well, you're a headliner, so you have all this work to do. You're very important to and very integral for the story. So yeah, you deserve this much of a cap. I think not making it a flat rate makes it a lot better. I think also because they're not working for those studios, I think we become in a different territory. A topic I'm really versed in is wrestling, right? And how the Vince McMahon and WWE does it, their wrestling, is that they're independent contractors. And unfortunately, a lot of these voice actors, well, fortunately, because they're able to freelance and do more stuff, right? They are not part of the studio, right? John DiMaggio does not work for Microsoft Studios. Nolan North does not work for Rocksteady, or Sony Santa Monica. Jennifer Hill does not work for EA. They are independent contractors, so to compensate them for their rate that they're doing, I think it makes a lot more sense. And the more you help out with these things, the more you help grow these things, I think it kind of works out more into the benefits of the studios. Now, where does that leave us, right? As consumers, we're looking at, well, where's the brass tacks? And that was the biggest argument, where everyone was like, well, I'm already paying $60 for a video game. Do I go to 80? Where do we go in here? Where is the overhead goes in here? And I think that's a very valid question. I think that we have to look at where the overhead does it come back to the gamers, right? Are we paying $80 for these games as opposed to a $60 game price? This is such a really weird thing, and it's a really weird thing when you look at the economics of making a video game, right? And how much money goes into a studio, so that kind of also breaks into the price point. The original price point, when we had to deal with stuff with chips and cartridges, it fluctuated due to how much money went into a chip, right? Now you're seeing these grandiose games that are being made with millions of dollars of technology behind it, and artists and musicians and tech people and QAs and all this other stuff. So if you're adding in more revenue for voice actors, does that end up hurting the lot? And I don't have a good answer for that, right? I don't think it's impossible to say that it's not fair. It's not fair for people to ask for more money, right? I don't think that's impossible to say. At the same time, I don't think it's improbable, to think that's an unfair, unfair to consumers. But at the end of the day, we have to look at where we're going to go forward, what we have to go forward, what do we expect for our meeting to do. Everyone always says vote with your wallet. That's definitely the best way to do it. So if you definitely don't think that we should be paying that much for your wallet, then maybe we don't use as many voice actors, or we don't use voice actors anymore. We go back to kind of reading it. I don't know. It's really weird, and it comes down because video games is a market that is in its infancy when it comes to entertainment. And as we kind of see that market grow, and as we see that stuff kind of move forward, we're going to see a lot of changes. We're going to see a lot of hiccups. We're going to see a lot of push forwards, right? So I would definitely stress this is something that we should definitely check out, something that we should definitely move forward on. But again, we'll find out more as it goes forward, and I definitely will keeping this abreast. I think it's a conversation we should definitely have. I know a lot of people don't like talking about unions and stuff like that. I think this is very interesting. And again, I do not blame the developers or the publishers because I understand the side that they're on, and I understand the side of the voice actors, right? So I get to play the fence, and that's a great thing for the first episode. Like, have an opinion, play the fence. Well, I'm leaning more to the union, but I understand where it comes from, and I think that's where we need to go forward. So I want to bring this, and this is where we get the whole fostering opinion stuff. And again, I love that I'm producing it all because it's just a static image on me. And then there's whiteboard behind here. But, what is your opinion? Should voice actors be compensated more for their work? Or should they, quite honestly, be paid a set rate? What is the fair way of doing this? Now, you can leave that comment in the comments below. You can go to our Facebook page and like that comment on there. And there's, you can tweet at me. I'm at Turbo Bison. And we can definitely get that conversation going there. So, I just rambled on for like 30 minutes about Screen Actors Guild or Screen Actors Writers Guild. So obviously, I want to kind of leave it with a little bit more of a light stuff. I just wanted to bring up just a little bit of other things. Actually, I don't have anything else. This is what happens when you have your first episode and you have like a rundown, but then you throw everything away. It's like, this is interesting. Because, there were some other things that were pretty cool. David Ansel showed that he had a prototype for Rayman on the SNES, and I thought that was a really cool thing with, him kind of talking, hey, what if we put this on a Nintendo Switch? And, I think that would be really cool, kind of looking at games that were developed, games that might be prototypes that were underdeveloped, and then we've now had them start to come out, and maybe we have now the technology to have these creators do something very different with them. I think that's really cool. And I was going to talk a little bit about the not Meek Mills. See, this is what happens when you deal with Drake. We deal with the Drake Pusha T thing. But yeah, Drake is just awful. And he's going to get slapped, and it's not going to be fun for anyone. So, hey, this was 30 minutes, small little 30-minute episode. These will vary depending on how I get everything in. I want to get guests on, obviously, even if I have to do recordings and play them over. I have figured that out. At least I think so. I will be testing that theory. But yeah, so definitely we're going to try to get some more guests in. I'm going to try to do a little bit more of this stuff. But like I said, this will be a daily show. This will probably run about 30 minutes to an hour, nothing very long like that, because I work overnight, and this is me staying up and basically doing a night show. What I also want to do is I want to hear from you guys. Everyone who is out there who is listening to this episode, even if you're listening to it later, if you have a question that you want me brought up, if you have a topic that should be brought up, please leave a comment on the Facebook page, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment at my Twitter, again, at Turbo Bison. We can definitely have these conversations. We can kind of bring these things up, and it's not limited to video games. Video games is one of my expertises because of what I've worked at and what I've done. But we can definitely talk about cartoons, music, movies, television, anything like that. I want to one of these days, I'm going to just come up here and just play the Old Man Logan trailer like for 20 minutes, and then say for 10 minutes how great it is. But yeah, I definitely want to do more stuff like that. I want to get you guys more engaged. So. Please, if you did like this episode, I understand it's very rough because it's pilot. If you did like this episode, please like and subscribe. Tell a friend. If you see it on Twitter, retweet it. But I want you guys to continue thinking and continue having these conversations and continue to foster opinions. Thank you guys. See you later.